Well, that was stupid. Okay, sorry, whoever asked questions, could you bring them back, please? Sorry about that. I'm back. Everybody's gone. Oops. No problem. Okay, I think people are slowly coming back. Sorry about that. I fiddled a wire by accident and then everything just broke. All right, people are coming back. Yeah, sorry for everyone. Please ask your questions again. I lost them. I play guitar. I guess that's it. Yeah. I don't have it here, so I wish I did. Risvi, no, I'm not writing any more poems. They were awesome. I enjoyed it, but then I just started to not like it like Arshian said I would. Maybe you just like the poems because that's when I actually called you out and you got some attention. Actually, you don't really like attention, so probably not. Yes, Skylar, I'm back. Sorry. Give you Ottawa a shout. Go you Ottawa. You should go to University of Ottawa because it's in the most important piece of Canada, and Canada's the most important country in the world. So you should go to Ottawa. Also, there's Rizvi there, and Rizvi's a wonderful person, so you should go there. Okay, again, sorry everybody. Okay, any advice on product recommendation systems beyond KNN? So I don't. It's not my forte. Is in specifics of recommendation systems. I do know there's lots of material. Actually, let me try and find. Let me go to Coursera and see what they have specifically on recommendation systems. I believe they have something. Recommender systems. Yeah, they do. So I would probably recommend this. I mean, I can't say it right away because I haven't done it, obviously, but probably I would recommend doing this. It's rated pretty well. There's University of Minnesota, so in North American University. I would probably do that if that's something that you wanted to learn about. You've been to Newfoundland. Even I haven't been to Newfoundland. I don't know whether to say it as Newfoundland or Newfoundland, even though it's not too far from me. Please do a playlist regarding object-oriented programming concepts. I assume that's what you mean. OOPS? Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So, it is programming specific. That's something that'll come eventually. It's also not something I'm a complete master at. Of course, I know the ideas of encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism. Another thing specific to Python, sure. So, I mean, I do have a Python playlist. It'll probably show up in the Python course eventually. Not quite yet. Lots of SVD attempts online, but nothing with actual implementation. So SVD, I assume you mean, what's it called? Sorry, the linear algebra thing, decomposition. Singular value decomposition, I assume is what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with the specifics, but that doesn't surprise me. Hello. My question or request actually is about deep learning. Could I do a video about 3D classification? CNNs on DICOM files. Thank you, I appreciate that. Interesting. So it's actually, again, not my forte is anything about 3D classification. I haven't done that. definitely something I'd like to look into, and probably for my job, it's actually would be a good piece to look into. So absolutely, I'll go ahead and sometime in the next few months I'll try to figure that out for sure. It's not going to pop out tomorrow, but 3D classification is something I'm obviously very interested in. And it's also extremely state of the art, and it's kind of hard to keep up with, but a really important concept for sure. So I will get into that. Do I think that I should apply for a data science internship or apply for an entry-level data science job with a master's in CS and an IBM AI engineering certificate and an IBM data science certificate? Is the or like which one should I do? Should I do data science internship or an entry-level job? Um, I mean, you're definitely ready. It sounds like with your qualifications of a master's and a couple relevant certifications, that's usually what I recommend to people is when you're ready for, applying to at least medium or beginner to intermediate level jobs. So yeah, I mean, I think you should do whichever one makes more sense. An internship is, sometimes easier to get, sometimes more difficult. There's usually less jobs in internships in general. There's usually more generally companies, it costs them a lot of money to train people, and so internships, they're generally doing internships not for actual work production to grab you for later. Of course, if you do meaningful work along the way, that's great, but it's generally easier to get an entry level job. So if this is an or like which one, I mean, you'd probably focus on anything, just getting a job, but more so I would focus on the entry level actual job. Yeah. Do I think, no, sorry, I'm reading the same thing. In some Kaggle competitions like house prices, the top solution got a perfect score in the public scoreboard. Is that overfitting, or is it possible to get nearly perfect models in easy tasks? Well, I mean, sure. It's really hard to say. You'd probably have to test their model with multiple solutions. Like I can't say without knowing the specifics of what's going on. Even if you gave me the model architecture and the exact parameters, like I would still actually have to make several tests and say, okay, no, on this data set, if I organize this data set differently, then it doesn't do very well on that. Hence, yes, it means it's overfit. I understand your question. It's really, you can't really answer that because yes, systems are able to do better than humans sometimes. Like if you look at reinforcement learning tasks, like the AlphaGo series or whatever, AlphaZero series, I mean they're playing better than anybody possibly can. So it's yes, systems are able to do this not on just easy tasks, whatever an easy task is, but more difficult tasks too. We can get very very good results. So it's quite hard to say actually. Yes. Okay. So can I get a couple more questions, please? If that's okay. I was probably going to cut it off at 12 my time, so 18 minutes from now. If you have anything you really want to ask, make sure you get it in soon so there's time. So how to improve your analytics skills? I mean, from a technology point of view, there's some things that you definitely want to learn and get, decently good at. You never really need to get that good at any particular framework. You just need to understand the basics behind it. Generally, they have a couple data structures and common things that you do, like in TensorFlow making models, and PySpark in particular for analytics. Get good at just understanding what a data frame or RDD is and what kind of operations you can perform on these. Analytical skills is a very broad thing. Like you can even say like an analytic solution is, any type of math here where we're solving something. And so any type of math would help here. Generally, I'm going to recommend getting really, really good at SQL. So practice that, understand, the very common things to do there. That's going to help a lot. And just playing around with various Python things, you're going to naturally get a lot better at analytics. Just using PySpark or Pandas and whatever kind of task you want to do, you'll get naturally good at analytics. But if you really want to practice this stuff in particular, you might want to take some statistics courses. Probability will help in there. Even calculus and linear algebra. It's all gonna make sense if you take everything. But in general, definitely just focus on getting decently good at the frameworks, and you'll get naturally good at these things. What are some good data visualization libraries? So I know most of them, what the names are. I don't know how to use all of them very, very well, but generally people recommend either Seaborn or Matplotlib to start, and then you generally go into Plotly. There's also the R stuff like ggplot. I believe Plotly is also for R as well. So those are generally what people use. Also, the whole visualization thing, you might want to go into Tableau. I really don't, and I truthfully don't know it very well. But for the Python stuff, yeah, it's generally Matplotlib people really start with. I don't even know Seaborn, but I know what kind of stuff it can do. And I just really like Plotly because I find it's very intuitive for doing everything you want to do. Do I use Docker? I have used Docker, so it's not something I use every day because generally when I make tutorials for these things, people don't want to see, well, not necessarily don't want to see, but it just kind of adds to the complexity a lot of the time. And I think you can go ahead and learn Docker somewhere else. But yes, if for people that don't know what Docker is, generally it's a containerization idea where, if we were to put something on Heroku, I wouldn't have to worry about all the specifics of whether Heroku's up to date. And Heroku is just one example, but it's really just deploying applications and making them run quickly. And most importantly, just actually making them run. We would use Docker. We'd put that in a container. I don't use it too much personally, but many people do, and you should actually. You really should. I'm interested in both natural language processing and computer vision. Do I have recommendations for learning them, and is it preferable to learn TensorFlow and PyTorch at the same time? TensorFlow and PyTorch, just pick one, honestly. Get really good at one of them. If you want to switch between them, that's fine, but I feel like it would just kind of take away from your learning. I would just choose one, and honestly, they're both good options. If you're looking for a recommendation, I would choose TensorFlow, but PyTorch is by no means a bad choice. For learning natural language processing and computer vision, yeah, definitely understand both a little bit at the same time because there's actually a fair amount of crossover. It's just they're all deep learning techniques, and so making deep learning models, even what we call a word embedding, which is the basics of natural and most important concept in natural language processing, you might even use that in a computer vision model or possibly some other model. And computer vision, we use convolutional neural networks, which is the most important concept for computer vision. And so we might even use those in natural language processing. So yeah, definitely understand that both of them are kind of sort of similar ideas. And then yeah, just really what you're truly interested in. If you're trying to get a job, I would probably pick one of the two to really concentrate on, and just don't worry about the jobs. What's there? They're both popular. Find out what you really want to do, what you enjoy. Not so much as the actual code that you enjoy writing at first, because it's going to be kind of difficult, but over time, the code's going to get easy, and it's just whether you're truly interested in these concepts or not. And they're both really cool, quite honestly. AWS versus GCP, which one would you recommend learning? So I mean, it's really just a toss. Like it's, if I was to really pick one, I would probably say Google Cloud Platform, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. I've just kind of found that AWS, I've had trouble actually getting stuff to work because because they're not really the company that does TensorFlow or PyTorch. they're having a little bit of trouble getting this stuff mastered on their systems. Of course, it works, and of course, many people use it. It's called SageMaker if you want to look into AWS SageMaker. I've just had a little bit of trouble getting these things to work, and of course, I have on GCP as well. I just think GCP or Google, does a better job of maintaining that because they are the same company that maintains the framework. Thank you so much for the 5K. Yes, thank you both. Yeah, it's really awesome. And actually, we're going to hit 6K pretty soon, even though we hit 5K like exactly a week ago, I think. So yeah, pretty cool. Thanks everyone so much, especially everyone listening today. I really appreciate that. You're still a fresh undergrad and find yourself enjoying both of them. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, there's no, if you don't need to pick right now, then go ahead, just learn whatever you want to learn. Everything is useful. Natural language processing, computer vision, anything in deep learning, it's really helpful. So enjoy, just have fun. Any professional cert for statistics for data science. So I think that's when you go down the Johns Hopkins one. I'm not as familiar with them because statistics is often associated with the R programming language, and I don't really like R. I'm very familiar with it because it's almost synonymous with statistics at this point. So if you want to, I would start looking at Johns Hopkins data science, or they might even have something called statistics. Yeah. Okay, so I think probably 10 more minutes, unless, I got a lot of viewers right now, so I might stick around longer, I'm not sure, but just to be sure, make sure you're asking your questions now so that I can get them answered 100%. Python all the way, then. So Python with statistics, I found that at least I'm mostly familiar with the Coursera ecosystem, and I never found that there was. I actually looked for it like a Python with statistics certification. You go ahead and browse that for me because I've done it a lot and I couldn't find a really good one. There was a lot of mixed stuff in there, like the IBM stuff. They have a fair amount of mixed with statistics. There's also the Databricks, like analytics with Python as well. That one probably would be good. It's just that statistics is such a concept that is really mathy, and so it's kind of weird for companies or anyone to make a course with statistics and Python. Obviously you can. I'm not at all saying that you can't, but it's not something that people generally do. You kind of just learn stats with R because it's so synonymous with it, and then you kind of do Python, whatever you want to do with it. So I don't have a good recommendation right now, but there probably is something, and if not, I will make it one day because it's a really good use, learning Python and stats at the same time. You have a text data and want to split this. I'm looking and I might not be able to answer this question, but let's see. I have a text data and I want to split the data into different categories. Okay, but I don't know how to work on text data. Do I have to learn complete natural language processing for that? So if anyone can help me out here, go ahead. Natural language processing, this sounds like an unsupervised learning model to me, where you have different categories. You want to split the data into different categories based on maybe their author or the whatever it is. You can tell me, and I'll try to help answer that. It sounds to me like you're trying to do an unsupervised learning model where you're not trying to say like, okay, you go to this class because I've trained you to be able to do that. It sounds more so like you're trying to split the ideas apart. And I forget the word for that. This is 100% a very common natural language processing idea. It might even be called topic modeling. I think I've done that before. I'm not a natural language processing person to me, but that is 100%. Okay, looks like we have an idea. Hello, hi, how's it going? Okay, again, just fill the chat with with questions, please, whatever you're thinking, because I really need to know. I really need like just a constant flow so I don't get stopped. Yeah, please ask lots of questions, please. Power BI is honestly just, I find, unnecessary. Like this, it doesn't help me. It would help me if I got really good at Power BI, but it don't really. That's not really my thing. I'm never gonna make I don't even really use that term because I don't like that idea. I find it's a little too basic. I don't think you're going to get amazing insights from Power BI or any kind of business intelligence tool. I don't think that machine learning and data science is that too much difficult. I think it's just so much better than business intelligence. So that's not my channel. It's somebody else's channel. It's out there. Not really my thing. What depth should one go for statistics? Well, again, okay, so you're talking to a statistics major that is not that passionate about statistics. So just keep that in mind. I think that you should definitely understand regression really, really well. I don't talk about everything in my machine learning course, for example. I leave out 90% of the theory about regression, but I don't think it's something that is, it's linear regression is an idea that, it's important to understand that very well. The idea of interpreting coefficients isn't bad. I don't talk about it too much, but it's good to know it's more so statistics, how to take that knowledge and turn it into models is the important piece. There's a lot of theory underneath that underlie confidence intervals and variances and hypothesis tests, which is basically the same thing as confidence interval. And depending on how much you go in the computational stats, there's some really fancy like bootstrapping methods that I'm not going to get into. I don't think it's too necessary. I think that to prove to companies that you know this stuff, a statistics degree is very useful. I find that they really value that, especially if you can get like a master's in statistics and you don't know statistics too much before. I think that's a really good option to get a job. But to actually understand machine learning and deep learning, you don't generally need to know too much statistics. And I actually have a video where I talk about what statistics you actually need for data science. So check that out if you're interested. It's just that there's so much in statistics that's really more if you're a statistician that only kind of applies to machine learning and deep learning. As long as you understand the idea of underfitting and overfitting, which they'll talk about at some point in the stats class, that, it's just a crazy formula that you don't need to understand. As long as you understand the model training theory and the different base models like linear regression, logistic regression, and that'll help you understand that a neural network is really just a more complicated logistic regression, or it's just a bunch of different components mixed together, and it's all some statistics model. If you get that idea, then you're probably good to go. Understanding a normal distribution and all those probability theory, it doesn't hurt. But definitely understand a normal distribution. It's just a curve, a continuous curve. Maybe the idea of like a binary variable is a good idea. And honestly, from that, I don't think that anything hurts, but that's probably enough. Data science, easy or not? It's not easy to get a job because you need to stand out, but to learn the theory, it's not too bad, I don't think. I don't think you need to learn a lot of natural language processing. It might help to learn a library that deals with it instead. Yeah, honestly, the libraries are pretty freaking good now. I agree with that. Opinion on Code Academy's data science career path. Code Academy is great to get started. If you don't know much about coding, it's fine. It's nice and motivating because it's ridiculously easy. But don't go into false hope that you're actually getting good at something when they give you achievements that's like good job, because it's not really doing as much as you think it is. It's just nice if you have literally no idea what's going on, then it gives you some motivation to proceed. Do I have thoughts about the International Data Analysis Olympiad? I have no idea what that is. I didn't know that existed, but I'm actually going to look that up, so I'm gonna note that for later. I would probably try to participate that in myself if I can. I don't know what it is. Minimum specs for a laptop for machine learning. So I do have a video that talks about the specs for machine learning, but I will say right now that even I do most of my training on the cloud, even though my GPU kicks ass, I would definitely recommend a strong CPU and RAM for sure. So I wouldn't buy a computer with less than 16 gigs of RAM anymore. 8 gigs is probably what most people would recommend nowadays, but honestly, I wouldn't go less than 16. I would probably go 12 or maybe at least 12, probably 16 gigs of RAM. Otherwise, like computers, just the Windows operating system is running so many freaking things. It's annoying. So probably 16 gigs of RAM. A computer with a good CPU like i7 is really recommended. It is a price jump, so if you can only afford a good i5, then an i5 is probably fine. And all the AMD stuff is fine, probably. But it's just I don't know it as well, and most people don't know it as well. For the GPU is what most people talk about in computers in deep learning, and that's because whatever machine is out there, it doesn't matter whether it's your phone, and yes, phones have this stuff too now. Check out the Pixel 6 if you want to see. Whether it's your phone, your computer, or any cloud computer, yes, to train a deep learning model, you need a GPU. But you don't necessarily need that because someone else has it, whether it's Colab, Google Colab, Kaggle, which is really the same system of machines, I think, and the online systems. So unless you are doing something really heavy, like a crazy convolutional neural network or object detection model, or something really heavy in just data in general, you probably can get away with using free online systems to do your training or cheap online systems to do your training, AWS, GCP, Azure. Other than that, if you really want to do your training at home, the minimum specs would be an NVIDIA, probably 1660 Ti is as low as I would go. And if you're not familiar with the GPUs, then basically I'll just say right now that the 1660 Ti is basically a budget 2060 or 3060, and my computer is a 3060, and that's the laptops. And for an actual computer, there's a couple other GPU names, but still generally they go under the 2060 or the 3060 name. And then if you really want to go crazy, 3070 or 2070, 3070, and ridiculously high money at that point, it's okay. You're probably fine. So I'd probably say in terms of whatever the frequency is and VRAM for a GPU, probably don't go lower than 1660 Ti. So yes, I am a stats major. Stats is great. I say that with an interesting sound because it gives you it's the most applied math easily. Like it's unless you're counting like physics as a math, then it's the most applied math easily because it's so applicable. You can translate that into making a model like right after you learn something. You learn linear regression, go do something. You learn logistic regression, go do something. So it's awesome. It's just there's a lot of crap that can be, it's not that I'm blaming the school or statistics itself. Obviously, they should teach you all of these things. There's just a lot of stuff in there that is kind of annoying and I do just forget about. But it's an awesome degree, ridiculously helpful for proving you know things, for learning the theory of all the underlying concepts for sure. I know machine learning, data cleaning, pre-processing, data analytics, data visualization at intermediate level, but till I think that you don't think you're job ready. So I mean, you might be. You're job ready once you've done something important. Okay, so all that stuff you're saying is really only important for interviews and maybe for your resume showing online that I know this stuff, but or for bypassing the resume's like self-cleaning system, like it tosses away 99%. If you can put that on there, then that's going to help. But you're job ready whenever you do something that's important, okay? So companies don't really care about you, I'm sorry, unless you are either a ridiculously strong academic person and you have no experience doing something useful, or like most people, you have a little bit of education, you're a decent candidate from that side, and then you've done a bunch of stuff that's actually useful, whether it is making a web app, making a phone app, making a library, making a social media that has all the interesting things on there. Unless you're doing that, then you're not really job ready. And as soon as you do those things, I would say that you are. What else? So how long have I been doing data science? A few years actually, but to be honest, like I'm graduating fourth year right now. I got really interested in it in second year, so I do have a co-op degree, so it's not as simple as like just like a year and a half or whatever. It's a few years, maybe 3 years. But yeah, you can get into it pretty quickly. And obviously, I don't know everything, but once you understand the analytics, machine learning, deep learning concepts, you can go ahead and read a blog one day and then talk about it the next day as if you knew it for years, because it doesn't take a genius to learn information and then summarize it and then repeat it again. But of course, I know a lot more than that behind the scenes because I have a statistics degree and I understand all the theory that a lot of people aren't really have gotten it done. And also I do computer science, so I can do the coding stuff as well. But for data science in particular, then yeah, a few years. Okay, so what skills are required for entry-level data science jobs? Yeah, so SQL is 100% the most important thing you can learn, and then Python, and then the Python libraries. Once you know SQL and the Python libraries, once you do something kind of interesting, you're ready for an entry-level job. If one is interested in a machine learning engineer role, what work does role entail? So exactly, I was actually going to make a video on that. Occasionally I stalk other people's channels and see what they're doing, and try to get ideas for my own as well. And one title that I would definitely come up with is what does a data scientist actually do? I don't know if that's a title that's already out there. That's just what I've gathered from other people. But yeah, what does a data scientist or machine learning engineer actually do? And that's extremely difficult because they can do so many different things. With a computer science role or a programmer role, you can 100% just make a role that says, front-end engineer, and that probably means you're doing JavaScript, or, .NET developer, and you're writing .NET code. But for a machine learning engineer, they often put that in the title, but then the job itself is something in particular. And that job, or it's not something in particular. I've had interviews for both where it says machine learning engineer, and then you have the interview and it's very clearly like, no, we're making a recommender system, or no, we need you to make a forecasting model, or actually you're a computer vision engineer, or the most common one is probably natural language processing person. So you really find out in the interview what job it actually is, unless it's already stated in the title or very, very clearly in the description. It's focused on something in particular. But a machine learning engineer, for day to day, you'll be using TensorFlow. You'll probably be thrown into an ecosystem where they have a huge pipeline of data that you do not understand. And one day they give you a graph that shows all of the flow of data, and they're constantly using terms of, yeah, this is coming in Kafka, and this part's in Hive, and this is where the SQL connects, all of that stuff that you have no idea what's going on, but you're in some silo somewhere that is writing TensorFlow or PyTorch code that's going to utilize that data to make some model. Maybe you already know in particular what it is, maybe it's not. To give the random terms, forecasting, predicting the future, regression model, deep learning, computer vision, natural language processing, any of those ideas might come into play. How do I get projects to work? Well, I mean, you fight with them for a while. So, if you're asking the question like, how do I make an interesting project and how do I see it through to the end? What I always say for this one is, be very flexible, and it's just a quote from someone else, not from me too much. Be very flexible about the pathway on how to get somewhere, but not flexible about where you want to be. So you can adjust a little bit about your product of, generally you come up with an idea that's like, I want a phone app that does this. Okay, so that's your general idea. And then you see that through to the future no matter what. Maybe you compromise a little bit on how the front end looks and a lot about the connectivity of different options, but you definitely need to just see it through to the future, fight with those bugs. If you end up fighting some ridiculous bugs, then just, maybe you do need to pivot around. And how I come up with interesting data science projects to begin with is, you need to learn the ecosystem of possible problems. So take the deep learning specialization, then the variety of problems that exist and how to solve them. And also the computer science concepts, unless you know how to write code really well, it's difficult. But once you get good at that, you have the whole toolbox and you're ready to make whatever project you want to make. Running ML models in the cloud is a plus since you learn a new cloud environment. Yeah, definitely learn the cloud, 100%. What are some projects to strengthen my fundamental skills on ML? So honestly, you can learn a ridiculously huge amount by studying one particular problem. And I don't mean in my mind I already have a particular problem. I mean one particular problem. You can just apply 50 different machine learning models on that and tune these different things, say, oh, actually, this might make sense to use an LSTM, or actually I could try some convolutional model. And maybe if I split the data set this way or did this data augmentation, just go on Kaggle, study the really well-known examples like the MNIST dataset or the Titanic dataset. They're two similar problems. One's classifying binary data, the other's classifying multi-class picture data. Even just looking at those two problems and applying whatever things that come in your mind or whatever comes up in a blog search, you can get so much information just by sitting there and playing around with models. So just play around, but take the deep learning specialization before you do this stuff, because then you're just kind of blank and you don't know how to do too much. Yes, so if you're working on an idea that is totally new and you cannot have the data sets to train your model, how can I do? And this is a really important question that not many people ask, because I think I feel like people already want to know the answer, but that's totally okay. If there is not an existent data set on an existent problem, well, it's hard to do machine learning, obviously, because we need big data. But that doesn't mean you can't solve the problem. And often, even if it doesn't look like there's a data set, as in you go to search this data set, the data set's still there, you just need to make it. And so Google Images is a very, very vast ecosystem. Like, there's so much going on there. If you want picture data, Google text, like just the internet is huge. So when we mean this explosion of data, no, like seriously, it's there. If you want text data, get good at scraping the internet with check Selenium. There's downloaders, which may or may not violate policies, so I'm not going to suggest anything in particular of what to do. But the data's there, okay? No matter what you want, the data is there. And if it's really not, then you're going to have to make the data set yourself, or at least automate some sort of generative process of making it and look into GANs if that's an option as well. So what are my thoughts on web scraping? Well, there are my thoughts on web scraping. You may have to get data, and that'll really help. Yeah. Will these specs work for machine learning? i7 or Ryzen 5, 16 gig RAM, 1650 or 1050 with 512 hard disk? I would probably bump the hard disk up to an SSD. If you actually mean hard drive. Other than that, yes, that's probably fine. I did recommend not lower than 1660 Ti, but 1650 is pretty close. It would probably be fine. Which to study in 2021, MySQL or NoSQL or any other thing, just get good at one of them. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. You just be good at SQL in particular, and then sure, some companies care about we use MySQL, but I would be shocked if a company, if you're a master in PostgreSQL and then they would use MySQL and they're like, no, we don't like that. Like, no, they don't really work that way. Like, just get good at SQL. It doesn't really matter. And yes, or NoSQL. I mean, yes, there's the NoSQL options, which simply means like they're not using an SQL style, which maybe graph databases, they're all fine to work with, but SQL is not dying anytime soon. It's actually growing, so don't worry too much. You're welcome. For graduate role in machine learning, how much intuition about the scikit-learn or TensorFlow algorithms do you reckon should a candidate retain to crack interviews? So how much under the scenes do you really need to understand about a machine learning model to do well in an interview? So anything vastly helps. Like anything that will very strongly improve your candidacy, especially if you're making a certain model. Like if your project is some convolutional neural network, if you can explain in particular why you chose that model, what it's doing, how you can adjust it if it was doing poorly, in many different ways, not only from a deep learning technique, but from just a general processing the algorithms, and the cloud whole setup it is as long as you can talk about these particulars, then you're probably good to go. Anything helps a lot, and if you're missing information on algorithms, then it could potentially be the reason that someone else gets through and you don't. A friend of mine is a forex trader. I don't know what that is. Is that a stock or a crypto? And he wants a bot to replicate his trading behavior. He has 3 years of trading data. How can this be done? How do we start? Oh, okay. So you actually have a project. I'm going to assume you're talking about either a crypto or a stock, and then you can treat them as basically the same thing. Honestly, don't ask me that question. Just go straight to a blog and just look about trading bots. They're out there. Go ahead and research how they work. It's not really my place. You do courses on Coursera like the engineering machine learning and the deep learning specialization, but I don't know how to implement them in Python. Well, they do implement them in Python. So the deep learning specialization implements them in Python. That's the course. And machine learning, honestly, if you didn't understand, I think the only reason you wouldn't be able to implement the machine learning stuff in Python is if you didn't fully understand what they were talking about. Because the linear regression, and this isn't a call out, like I'm just saying that you probably need to understand this a little better if you don't know how to implement, because as long as you're a decent Python programmer, as in you can use NumPy, and ignoring scikit-learn because that's going to do most of that stuff for you. As long as you understand how to use NumPy and you get what he said, then you should be able to implement it. And if you're not able to, then honestly just watch it again, because I think that's the best practice. And honestly, good on you knowing that you're not able to implement them, because that is how you know whether you understood the content or not, is if you can implement them in a programming language. So started your first job as a data scientist at a consulting startup. Congrats, that's awesome. Feeling like an imposter, aren't we all? Is this common for a fresher data scientist? It's killing my enthusiasm slowly. Yeah, imposter syndrome is a real thing. It's hard to learn data science and be interesting at the same time sometimes, because you learn all of the same concepts and then you're all good at the same kind of things, and that's true about everything. It's the same thing about those that learn React and Angular and Java and all these different software things, and really just about anything. The way to stand out is to do something and be good at something in particular. So for me, it's mainly about communication, and deep learning is how I would not consider myself an imposter, because I feel like I stand out in that particular way. Make sure that you actually care about something in particular, and not just data science, because get into natural language processing, computer vision, what really interests you, and yeah, you probably will start to seem like an imposter if you don't stand out. Don't know if I saw your two questions. I'm not sure if I did either. If it was from when it got cut off, probably not. I might have just skipped it as well. Sorry. What is my favorite area in data science and why? 2, best source for free data to play with. Is it Kaggle? Short answer, yeah, it's Kaggle. But for the first one, what is my favorite area to learn or to study in data science? I'm very tied between computer vision and natural language processing, but I'd say computer vision is more so. Just 1 second. So computer vision to me is the most important thing, because our eyes are so much. Often people do say that the most important invention in humans made is language, but that's because we already could see things, and we only learned how to write and speak later. So you can see things, and it's so underrated, the idea of computer vision. Of course, it's hyped up and stuff like self-driving cars, but seriously, our eyes do basically everything for us. They guide almost everything that we do. So I would say computer vision 100%, translating that into computers and making it really good. Especially because I'm going into a job in healthcare, and so that's very important to me, is helping people out. And computer vision, doctors are just, they can see so many things right away, and so we can use their expertise and automate that through supervised learning to do their job, either help them do their job or automate things that they're not always able to do. So, is it necessary to learn HTML, CSS, Flask, etc. for a data scientist? You would be able to get a job without them, most likely, but it's a ridiculously good way to stand out, and more so, it just shows that you're able to you're able to understand that data science and machine learning is software, like it's code, and it's a particular niche of code where you're training models. Except it's hard to be a data scientist by just making models and having no idea about how to link them up to anything. So Flask is the most common one because it's a very easy way to link it up to everybody. The web is, it's how we see things. It's how I'm streaming to you right now. It's how you're watching me back. Uh, so that's a really good thing to do. And the whole CSS, JavaScript, that type of thing, you don't necessarily need to be a master of front end. It's nice to, and I said last time I answered a similar question, I always think of Steve Jobs with this one, where Steve Jobs, used to be the CEO of Apple, so widely known because everything is communicated extremely well. So showing an awesome front end is a really good thing to do, but you don't necessarily have to do that. But knowing how to link stuff up in general is very helpful. Yeah. What cloud service is better to learn in 2021, AWS or any other? So the big three, which again are Azure, AWS, and GCP, are honestly all pretty equally good options. If you want the one that is most likely to help you get a job, the answer is AWS. If you want, in my opinion, the easiest, and they're all fairly similar, but in my opinion, the easiest to work with is GCP. And Azure is still there, and it actually has a bunch of free credits that you can do a lot of stuff with. So go ahead and try that out as well. Given a data set or a data science task, how do you go about approaching it? There is no end goal given to you, just the data. Okay, so firstly, I want to make sure there's more questions after this, so I don't get stuck on nothing. So please help me out there. And then after that, so given a data set or a data science task, how do you go about approaching it? There is no end goal given to you, just the data. So I mean, you have to want to do something. So I think what you're asking is basically you're in a job and their task is to, they don't know in particular an optimization process. They don't know, and that's true in most jobs, like your manager just giving you data for the sake of giving you data. Sometimes they have a project in mind, sometimes they don't. And either way, whether they do or not, you are very open to adjusting it to do whatever you think is helpful for the company. Ultimately, you want to make money. Okay, so to do that, you definitely need to just analyze it a lot. So looking at each of the columns of the data, generally you're given an SQL database, and so look at the type of data that you're given, and not necessarily at this stage too analytical. Like it doesn't, of course, we associate it with analytics very commonly, like doing queries and analysis on it, like visualization, except, that can help, but just thinking in general about what the heck you're dealing with is extremely important. So again, this is how I come up with data science ideas. Is I don't even think about data yet. I just think about something cool, and then think about all the processes about how to get that. So it's the same thing if you're given the data set already. Okay, now we have data. What do you want to do? I don't know. If you seriously have no idea, then you look at blogs of what people might want to do with this data. So say you're throwing in an insurance company and you have no idea what you want to do with all this premium data. Well, stuff's going to come up if you Google that with machine learning. And just the biggest thing you can do, I'll say every time, is take the deep learning specialization. Again, I have a review on that, or check my machine learning certifications video, that roadmap that makes sure that you take these. All of those different courses are going to make sure that you're able to look at data, and then you're going to make an impact with it. Okay, so as long as you understand a vague, rough ecosystem of machine learning models and how to work with data, you will know just by looking at it what you can do with it. And if you really don't, because you're not familiar with this data, then look up blogs about what to do with it. Okay, so Jupyter Lab, Jupyter Notebook, or plain Python from terminal, and why? So I like Google Colab, which wasn't mentioned, and that's because it doesn't run on my computer. I don't have to worry about updating TensorFlow or breaking, because theirs is very unlikely to break, and if it will, people will be on them immediately. So I recommend Google Colab as much as you can. Of course, that is the very obvious downside is you're using whatever their system is and it's not yours. So if you have an expensive GPU and you want to train on that, then yeah, Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook. I've looked into some of the extensions before, and like Kite or whatever can help you out. It gets kind of confusing, and that's why I just ignore this most of the time, because I've spent so much wasted time just figuring out different environments for these things, and sometimes you have to, like 100%. Sometimes you have to fight through these things and just work with it. But I've wasted so much time getting like extensions to work, and different virtual environments, whether it's Docker or just Python virtual environments. You get into errors a lot. So whatever you want to use, honestly, just find something that you're comfortable with and stick with it, whether it's in the Jupyter ecosystem or not. So I'm given some business data, and right, okay, follow up to that. Yeah, that makes sense. Given business data, and they want you to use data science to derive some insights. Yeah, I hope that I answered that question. That makes sense. Thanks. By the previous question, implementation in Python, yep, I remember. I meant is like, for example, you don't know how to implement gradient. ML course by engineering, they use MATLAB, so I don't know how to implement in Python. Well, I mean, MATLAB, I hope you see, is ridiculously similar to the NumPy library in Python. Like, it's MATLAB or Octave or whatever, it stands for Matrix Laboratory, and so that means linear algebra. So whatever they're doing there, the NumPy is almost guaranteed to have very similar syntax to do the exact same thing. Okay, it's going to look very similar. You should be able to make that translation. If you're not, it's because you're just missing some information there. You need to study it a little more closely. You should be able to implement, and I don't mean you as in right now, it's disappointing that you're not able to implement this. I mean, given some hard work translating between these programming languages, you should be able to. I cleared your doubts. That is awesome. After knowing you for last 1 month. Yes, no problem. I really am glad to hear that. Okay, again, I need questions flowing so that I don't get stuck here. Thank you. So I learned SQL, data analytics, visualization, then took the Andrew machine learning course. What should I do next? Not to be rude, I really hope you heard the deep learning specialization is absolutely 100% what you should do. And again, check my machine learning certifications roadmap on what to do. It comes after the machine learning course, 100%. Do the deep learning specialization. It's not that hard. It will help so much to understand the whole ecosystem of problems that you can solve with data science. So please, everybody listening, check out my machine learning certifications video. Go to the description of that, or the roadmap, so machine learning certifications roadmap. Look at that video. You don't need to watch the video if you don't want to. Go to the about section. It lists the steps in order, what I think you should do. So it is there. Please do that. Do you think there is a free artificial intelligence out there that is self-sufficient and learning? Some of the news nowadays are written so poorly that to me it could have been written by, do I think there's AI that's writing work? No, I don't think they are right now. At least not stuff that hits the news well. Like anything, I don't know what your news system is called, but all of mine, I'm pretty darn sure that they're not written by AI right now. Even though, yes, agreed, artificial intelligence has the ability to write somewhat well. It's not quite human-like. It has some errors. What is possibly true is that we might use AI to assist writing, and so it might generate a story, and then we can edit that and get rid of all of the annoying stuff that's in there. But right now, probably not. How will you know when that starts happening? You won't, and that's the awesome part, is that when artificial intelligence starts taking over stuff like writing, and it will, 100%, it will, because we already have the capability of doing it, and we're still in the extremely early stages. Artificial intelligence will be able to write like a human, and also, of course, plug that into an application that's easily posted to the internet or some common network or the news system. And you won't know when that starts happening. Please ask some questions, by the way, so that I don't get stuck after answering this. You won't know when that starts happening because right now you can tell because whenever it's kind of spastic and the writing's not really that human-like, but we'll get to a point where you won't be able to tell, and that's when it's happening. Like that's the exact same moment is when you stop noticing, then that's when it's happening. And I get what you're saying, as in we can't notice because it starts to look like a human. Well, you'll see in news somewhere that artificial intelligence is starting to do this, and it's going to become the norm eventually. But that's the exact same time. It's going to come normal. It's going to look normal, and they'll tell you that this is happening. You're very, very welcome. Clearing all the doubts. I should start learning Python soon. I think that is the issue. Yes, I think you just need to get a little bit better at Python. I have my course that's not too full yet, so you might want to look elsewhere if you want to get really good at Python, or just practice with different things that I'm doing in Python. But yeah, you need to get a really, really good at Python to be doing anything really. Should rate the corresponding Python codes, take some Python. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What is the use of LinkedIn groups related to machine learning? They're awesome. Like, join all of them, honestly. Like, whatever is interesting to you. LinkedIn and Facebook groups are exactly the same thing, except one's in LinkedIn and one's in Facebook. And so, whatever it is, like, whatever the group's talking about is what you're going to see. So they're often going to talk about spam, okay, as in a lot of them are going to spam. A lot of groups can be, filled with annoying stuff, and so it's kind of annoying. But luckily, algorithms know that, and they push them to the bottom. And what you are going to see is a lot of interesting stuff, like up-to-date information, hopefully. People post tutorials as well, which I think still counts as information because I do that too. I post a lot in those groups, and that's because it feeds into I need to grab people, and so post to those groups to grab those people and hopefully give them something interesting. Like it's not spam because it's actually what the group is for, is to get tutorials. But they're really, really nice for, first of all, getting help that can't just come from Google. So the annoying part of those groups, again, is that a lot of people ask questions that should just be Googled, and you get your answer by reading the Google search. Instead, a lot of people think that you need a human answer when you really don't. And also, there's a lot of stuff like, help me code this, when it's just, spend 10 minutes and learn how to code it yourself. But there's also is a lot of questions that are actually valid, that people ask and that you can ask and get, maybe even make some friends that in those groups that help you out. For Python, yeah, this is especially with a data science theme. Check out the University of Michigan stuff for Python on Coursera. It's called Python for Everybody, I believe. Do you know of any really good OC? I don't know what OC is. That a compression thing? OCR? Let me just Google that quickly. What is OCR? Optical character recognition. Oh, is it for understanding like what a text is and from an image, that kind of thing? What is it used for? For automating data extraction from printed or written text. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so for understanding what's in like a PDF or an image or something like that, OCR. You can tell that I don't. I mean, I just Googled the term, so I don't really have an idea there. I'm sure that you could get some information if you Google that. Sorry about that. How do we use LinkedIn? Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So how do you use LinkedIn and Facebook groups efficiently? Well, I use them efficiently by promoting content that I think is interesting to people. How you might use it is however you want to get out of it. So Facebook and LinkedIn groups, you can get a lot of information in, and it's really nice because the algorithms that they use are all about, they're going to promote content, again, particular to you, and just what in general is popular. And so that's probably what you want to see. So you're automatically going to see the content that you want to see because that's what their algorithm does. And that's why they're two of the biggest companies in the world. But how you can use it, as in, of course, you can take action, and what you want to do to get out of these Facebook or LinkedIn groups is totally up to you. If you need, try not, and I'm just gonna kind of ask something here, is try not to ask questions that you know can be Googled, as in make sure before wasting anybody else's time, because everybody wants to help themselves. Of course, I do everything that I can to help you guys, and I really think I thank you so much for enjoying my content and helping me out, because we're all trying to help each other out as well. But in general, from a human point of view, anyone on that group wants to get information for themselves. So do what you can, but be very mindful of, going to the internet first, understanding every single thing you can before you ask a question to anybody else, because you don't expect anything for free. I try as much as I can to give, and as little as possible to take. And so, in those groups, whatever you can, you will get the most out of it if you do nothing but give whatever you can. Of course, the majority of people are more for the take, and that's totally okay, because you're asking questions, whatever you can. Okay. I hope that made sense. Just research what you want to ask before you ask it, and then go ahead, ask whatever questions you want. Actually, I will point out something here. Is something I find really great about LinkedIn in particular is what shows up in my feed all the time is people posting like cheat sheets on something, which is like, say, SQL. It just shows with really pretty, people make really nice, pretty writing and organization of content. That's just like a page or two long. That is really the gist of what you need to know. And even just keep that as a side resource that you might look at every now and then. So keep an eye out for those. People love them. I also love them. Yep. So can we land jobs as a data analyst as a fresher, and what skills are needed? For just a data analyst job, you might even want to go to the R route. I'm not sure. But you definitely 100% need to get really good at SQL. And that's true for all of these jobs. But in particular, data analyst, get really good at SQL. You may want to learn Spark and Big Data. It's probably something useful to learn. And then pick a programming language. But if you know for sure you're just going to stick with data analyst, then you might even want to pick R, which kind of hurts me to say it because I'm not an R fan. But that's its forte, really. Okay, so how do we get started with semantic segmentation? What are the essentials to get started? So I've never done in particular semantic segmentation, and so I was thinking about image segmentation. Semantic segmentation, that's natural language processing, right? So I'll just go ahead and recommend there's a natural language processing specialization that if you really want to learn about NLP, I would probably go and do that. If you don't care too much about the fundamentals of what's going on, other than understanding word embeddings and deep neural networks, probably can just get by with some blogs and even people's Kaggle tutorials on these things. Go ahead and search them and you're probably good to go. But I recommend as much as you can kind of understand the theory of what's going on before you apply too much, because it's just going to be discouraging that you have no idea how to tweak and change anything. Even though you might be able to get a task done, it's hard to show in an interview that you know these things if you really don't understand what's going on. Can I please tell you how much, I thought I answered that already, how much HTML, CSS, Flask I know? Yeah, I already answered that question earlier, so if you didn't see it, just wind the video back and I talk about it at some point. Sorry, it was like maybe 30 minutes ago, something like that. What do I think of GitHub Copilot? I think it's expected, honestly. Not to say I see all the future, but I think it was relatively obvious that, code would be able to be reproduced by artificial intelligence because we're great at natural language processing and we've written so much code and even documented what code does. And we have so many developers out there that would be willing to explain what their code does. I don't know exactly how GitHub Copilot was made. Obviously, it's a natural deep neural network and natural language processing model that's basically sequence to sequence. But it's kind of obvious that they would do something like that. And Copilot in particular is pretty good. Like if we're actually going to talk about the product, and I assume it's going to be a paid product, um, I would suspect that it's pretty good. I've seen people use it. I didn't get access to the beta. I didn't even look at it. Might have got access if I tried. I'm not sure, but um, you can check other people's using GitHub Copilot, and I think it's pretty good. The problem that I really have with Copilot is that it's going to be difficult to mix and match. So you can really do what it says, and so it's probably it might get it right that if you're trying to do something in particular, then you can say write this function that does this thing, or write this class that does this thing. It'll probably do that, and that's really, really fantastic, and also kind of expected that it would be good at this point. But in terms of making, a whole project, it's the only value I see in making small components is for education. So if you just write a little bit of code, and you're seeing the implementation, then that's mostly for an educational value in my point of view. Of course, there's some irritating things where you could just automate this and that would be great. But I'm saying for making a huge, like full-blown application, it's going to be very difficult to, say do this, then do this, then do this, and expect them all to magically line up together. And I wouldn't expect it to be able to, if you ask the big question of like make this project, I wouldn't expect it's going to be able to do something like that. It's going to be for small functions, which I think it'll be really good at automating tiny work that you don't really want to do. It's going to be good at just seeing what code does what. Like if you just want to ask the question, like, how might I go about making this? Then it's going to do that for you in one particular way. But I don't think it's this huge solution to automating like actual applications. It's just kind of tiny work and educational as well. Semantic is part of image segmentation. So I did have that term right? Was I being stupid? Semantic is a term. So, semantic segmentation is. Oh, sorry, I was being stupid and I forgot my term. I was thinking semantic because semantic is like what's the semantics of a sentence. But yeah, you're right. Semantic segmentation is what I thought it was at first. So the way to learn that, so if you have the idea of what it's doing, then you understand that it's actually saying which pixels belong to what image, and you're doing not just like classification or detection. It's actually saying all of these pixels are for this thing, these pixels are for that, and so on. And so you should also understand that, if you understand some deep learning stuff, you'd get that, okay, I understand what the loss function for this might be. Like you actually need to compare pixels to what they actually should be for all of them. And then go ahead and just write blogs if that's what you want to do. I don't know of any sort of certification. I don't think I can recommend something like image segmentation on Coursera or anything like that. It's pretty in-depth. I'm not sure if the TensorFlow Advanced covers that or not. But this is something pretty particular and state-of-the-art that I would go ahead and just, if you at least understand the deep learning specialization and computer vision, like what a convolutional neural network is, kind of what object detection is, kind of what classification is, and how you might do these things with like transfer learning. If you understand those concepts, then you're probably good to go to learn segmentation via a blog and just kind of do some exercises on the internet. What do yes. So for business analytics, what I recommend R or Python. I mean, the term business always bugs me because business has very little meaning to me. Like, what is a business? What is business analytics versus normal analytics? If it means like finance data or something like that, like it's not very specific. If for analytics in general, if you're just doing analytics, you might only want to learn R. And either way, you probably want to learn PySpark, and I know that's Python, and so you would probably learn Python if you're going to do that. My recommendation is to still learn Python and PySpark most likely, but you may want to look at R if you already like the R universe, then stick with that. It's just I find that if you are going to analytics, you probably should switch over, in my opinion, to the data science, machine learning, and deep learning, because that's where the world is going. That's what my channel is pretty much always going to be about. But that's also just kind of who you're talking to. Of course, just analytics, it's always fine. Make sure you know SQL and R as well if you want to do R. Otherwise, Python and PySpark and the pandas libraries and NumPy is still good. I think Copilot is good use of data that is just sitting there. Exactly, it is good. It is a good use. Like, it was just, that's what I meant by obvious. Like, it's just kind of, it's pretty obvious that we'd want to automate and make a text classification model that, or not classification, but sequence to sequence model using this data. It makes sense. I am doing really great work, admiring the effort I'm keeping in these tutorials. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. How do we actually build models from scratch? That's where I get stuck. Well, then don't. Like, if you, it depends what you mean from scratch. If you mean straight up implementing like a convolutional neural network from NumPy, just don't. Like, it's a good use of your time because it's, you know, you'd understand it really, really well. So I'm not going to say it's not a good use of your time, but it's maybe not the best use of your time. And if you mean making models from scratch, like, how would you go ahead and make a new convolutional neural network? Like how would you make a model to do this task? Well, you're going to be using TensorFlow or scikit-learn, and they kind of just follow a blog that does that, or check out maybe one of my tutorials. I have a fair amount now that use various scikit-learn and TensorFlow models, but not everything, and so feel free to check other blogs. Really, you just got to get used to whatever you're trying to do, look up how to do it, follow someone else's for a bit, and go ahead and do that. And if you really mean from scratch, like from base Python or NumPy, think about whether that's worth your time. It may or may not be. Like the layers and sizes determination. Oh, if you mean in a neural network, like how do I care about the stride of a convolutional neural network or the number of nodes in a dense network? It doesn't really matter too much, honestly. Like, you'll get used to just, if you see some examples, you'll see that people are pretty much just winging it on various model sizes, seeing what makes sense. The important parts are, in general, what your model is doing, like what's the input, how did you pre-process it, what's the output, and in general a bit what's going on in the middle. The specifics of each, you know, that's why we use something like transfer learning, because to get state of the art, then you just kind of do whatever is already out there. Looking refreshing with my quick style course on PyTorch in the future. Okay. Whether TensorFlow is ever necessary, especially for neuroscience. So are you asking, is TensorFlow necessary? Because you're looking, sorry, can you ask that question again? I got kind of confused by that one. Sorry about that. I do think TensorFlow is probably necessary unless you're going the PyTorch route. Do I have any beginner videos of me going through a Kaggle challenge or something similar? Yes, the Titanic one does that. And I will actually do probably the MNIST one again, because I don't have a very clear video on how I submit to that. But really watch the Titanic one and how I submit, even just the end if you want, of how I submit to Kaggle and see the percent. But in general, the idea is that you make a model and you submit, you run that model on the test information, you make your predictions, put that in a CSV, and you submit to them a CSV. If you don't know SQL at all, then I would recommend doing my 30-minute video on SQL, and also the Spark SQL is kind of a different way of doing that. But yes, so to learn SQL, I mean, there's a certification somewhere. I forget where it is, so I'm not going to point on my channel, but on Coursera there is an SQL certification, actually a couple of them. So I would recommend really any of those. I forget in particular the names. You can ask me if you come back to me and look at them. There's a Python for everybody specialization and a Python for everybody course, says I'll have to apply financial aid. Should I do the whole specialization or just the course would be fine? I mean, you can probably, so remember the specialization is a group of courses. So if you're not familiar with the ecosystem, Generally, the courses are free and you can audit them. If you really don't want to get the certification, of course, I always recommend doing the certification, because if you're going to bother to put in all that work, you probably should do get the certification out of it. But if you don't want to, then that's totally fine. You don't have to. A specialization is just a group of courses in order. So the courses are there. So just kind of look into it a little bit more and understand what's going on there. You can have access to the courses. I think the specialization would be better. Probably. Doing it would be a good use of your time, because you get the degree or the certificate out of it, which people are familiar with. Yeah. Where to learn SQL? I answered that question above. Do I recommend a consistent minimum amount of time per day to start learning Python programming at a professional level? I don't recommend learning Python. Sorry about that. That sentence cut off at a bad time. What I'm about to say is that I wouldn't learn Python for the sake of learning Python necessarily, because you absolutely can go ahead. Python is an awesome programming language that you pick up over time, and you can learn bits here and there following people's blogs. And of course, I have a Python specialization or course that does exactly what I'm saying you might not want to do. But it can be a tad boring is the only issue, is that just straight up learning a programming language for the sake of learning a programming language can be a tad boring, although it is extremely useful. Python in particular, it's very easy to pick up, and you can kind of just read people's code and figure out what it does. And if you don't understand what it does, then you can look up each line at a time and be like, oh, okay, the zip function is doing this, or oh, I guess that's how you do a for loop. That kind of makes sense. And if you don't know those concepts, then yeah, probably if you don't know any coding at all, probably should go through a coding course to go through if statements and for loops, because without knowing those, it's kind of tricky to understand the general flow of things. But if you know any coding, probably can just kind of jump into looking at people's blogs and figuring it out. Otherwise, yeah, if you have no coding, you might want to learn it all from scratch. And in terms of a minimum amount of time per day, I never really answer that question with the way that people want me to, because the answer to me always is, do stuff that you enjoy. If you're really hating just learning Python itself, then, just don't spend so much time on it that it's pissing you off. Do what you can, do what you enjoy, and you're going to go from there. Machine learning or deep learning or artificial intelligence, okay, I need to explain the concepts, yeah. So here's for anyone else that doesn't, and I'm not calling you out, don't worry, lots and lots and lots of people don't understand the different components here. Machine learning versus deep learning versus artificial intelligence is weird, because artificial intelligence is stuff that uses machine learning, and machine learning is what also uses deep learning. But that makes sense, because machine learning may or may not be deep learning. So deep learning generally means nonlinear, so complicated models, and machine learning, it encompasses both linear machine learning models, like basic stuff that's still often helpful, as well as deep learning as well. Okay, so which one is booming right now? They're all booming. Okay, they're all kind of the same thing, as in AI uses deep learning, and machine learning is deep learning. And so they're all, that's the organization of things. So all of them. NLP versus image processing, which generally people replace that with computer vision, which means the same thing. Natural language processing versus computer vision, which one is need of? So they're both huge. Like if you go to search jobs in either computer vision or natural language processing, you may get 60-40 on 60% of natural language processing, 40% is computer vision, maybe something like that. From what I've found, natural language processing seems to be a little more popular. It's a little bit harder than computer vision. It's a little bit easier to get text data than it is to get picture data, but they're both very, very popular for sure. Okay. I'm probably going to go for, until I guess the viewers drops way down, I'm going to take like a two minute break, and I hope that you don't leave during that, because I'm just filling up my water and going to the bathroom very shortly. So I'll be right back. I hope that's okay. Okay, I think only one person left. That's pretty awesome, actually. Okay, so do I recommend? Yes. Are Coursera certifications worth it? Yes. Let's have this discussion. So, are Coursera certifications worth it? Straight up, if you look at my LinkedIn, I don't have them. Does that answer the question? Absolutely not. I have nearly a degree in the University of Waterloo in statistics with co-op experience with a fairly big online portfolio. So do I think that I have to put them on there? I do not. Nonetheless, I do sincerely think, and I would never promote content that I do not think is useful. I could also be promoting shoes and all these other stupid things. But seriously, Coursera in particular I know so many companies and interviewers where I go and do an interview and they say, like, oh, yeah, you've done the Andrew Ng certification or the Andrew Ng course, or oh, you did the Andrew Ng deep learning certification. Yeah, that stuff's awesome. Like, seriously, the interviewers themselves know these things, and they're also likely the same people that are picking your resume. And even just from a LinkedIn algorithm point of view, it very much helps you out there. So, yes, I really do think that since the material is so incredible, it really is. The engineering stuff in particular and the TensorFlow specialization is also very good. This material is so good, as well as the IBM, the ones I have down below, are the great. If you were trying to show that you know data science or analytics, if you're doing analytics, you should definitely have the Google Analytics certification down below. And if you're doing data science, you should definitely have the IBM data science specialization down below. Because every single employer that I know has heard of these things. Okay, they know them and they respect them very much. Okay, and I recommend that getting the certification because you get the content, you're doing the content anyway. Okay, so you might as well and look into Coursera Plus on which ones it actually covers. But Coursera Plus is a membership that gets you a whole bunch of different things, and so check down below. If it's not covered, then just check down below for those certifications. But there's so many good ones that are like seriously, it doesn't make sense not to do them because I get it. If you really, really, really can't afford it, then that sucks. Then that's fine. Learn the material. Go ahead. But the certifications are worth it. Okay, IBM Data Science and Google down below. The the whole thing that I have in my machine learning certifications roadmap. That video describes everything, all the certifications that I think would be really, really beneficial for you unless you, and it's true, it's great for anybody, and it would have helped me out too. If you are in a situation that I don't like to brag, but a pretty good situation like me, where you've already done a ton on your online portfolio, but that's not enough because you need an academic background that shows you know your stuff. And so the certifications, I think, might be a substitute for you, although education from academics is still very helpful. It has to be from a well-known university. It has to be in something like statistics or very close because data science has statistics underlying everything. Might get away with a computer science degree. Engineering probably should get certifications. So really would recommend them. Okay. Um, can I say a few words about quantum computing? Well, that's good because I can only say a few words about quantum computing. Qubits. Um, 0 and 1 at the same time. Does anyone know more quantum computing than me? No, not really, because, or sorry, you might. No, I can't really say any more words about that because I'm not a quantum computing person. Um, its potential, the best language for quantum computing. I believe they have a particular, I forget what it is. There's like some quantum computing language, like QCL or something like that, I think. Um, Power BI or Tableau. If you really want to pick one, I'd say Tableau, but if you are just asking the question, I would say neither because I would just get good at Python and the visualization libraries, and I'm not a Power BI fan. Yep. So I did actually answer GCP, AWS, or Azure maybe like an hour ago. But basically, That's okay. I get people dropping a note. GCP, AWS, or Azure. I would suggest GCP, but AWS is probably the biggest for getting a job right now. GCP is getting up there, and Azure is probably the third, but also a very good option. Pretty much Azure, I would suggest if you want a job at Microsoft, which I get that. Probably would go down the Azure route. Do we need to be good at competitive coding for applying roles in ML roles? So I'm going to keep competitive coding synonymous with the idea of data structures and algorithms, and mostly the algorithms part. Of course, data structures, you need to know them, but the concepts like graphs, graph as in like not a graph as the visualization standpoint, but like depth first search, that'll get the right term. Breadth first search, dynamic programming, all of those other similar ideas, strings. So for an ML engineer role and all of these, sorry, so all these data science type roles, the interviewer may ask you a question in that area. And so you should definitely be good enough at coding to be able to answer basic questions. Okay, so you should be able to get pretty much every easy LeetCode code question. If you don't know what LeetCode code is, check that. It's how to practice competitive programming. So check the easy questions there for sure. For the medium ones are starting to get up there where it's more difficult than most machine learning engineers would ask. That's stepping more into the FANG companies that would do the mediums or the hard still. But being really good at the easies, I think, is really important. And, maybe some of the easier medium level difficulty doesn't hurt. But yes, I do think you should at least know data structures and, some of the easier algorithms might not need to be a master at dynamic programming. And specifically for competitive programming, that means you're really, really good at these things. No, I don't think you need to be really, really good at these things unless you're doing FANG company. But it doesn't hurt. It just helps for coding. Like it'll make you a better programmer regardless. So it's never a waste of time to do LeetCode code problems, but might not be the best thing to do. Computer vision courses. Yeah, so that's where it kind of confused me. So there is something on just computer vision, I believe, on Coursera, but I've looked too. Take the deep learning, at least the convolutional neural networks course for sure, and then the TensorFlow parts of the computer vision parts. Absolutely, that's where you get your base knowledge. For certification, I haven't found a really good one in computer vision. Maybe someone else can help me out there. But yeah, really it comes from the deep learning part, the CNN, convolutional neural network course, and the TensorFlow stuff will gear you in that right direction so that you're able to Google and understand the things that you have to. I sleep way more than you might think I do. Actually, I want to talk about that one for a while, and please listen here if you're here, because a lot of people, and it's not about me explaining my situation. It's not about me explaining my situation. It's about understanding that I do not work 24/7. Okay, I really, really don't. And even throughout the day, I take many breaks. When I get frustrated and done with something, I walk around for 20 minutes and then go back to it. I take a shower if I can. And when I'm tired, I play a lot of video games with friends at night as to really refresh. And I wrote it in a LinkedIn post once, the most essential thing you can possibly do is ensure that when you wake up, you are ready to work. Okay. And I don't necessarily mean you need to go on your phone and go put on YouTube or go to Coursera as soon as you wake up. I mean, you need to make sure that you are able to work, you do something that day. So during that day, you need to work that day, and you need to do whatever you can so that you wake up and want to work. Okay, the key word is want, not able. You need to want to work that day. And so to want to do that, you'll probably need to sleep a fair amount. I'll be honest, what did I sleep last night? I think I went to bed at around 12:30 my time and woke up at around 9 my time. Okay, so maybe 8 hours or so probably. So it's a really good idea to get a lot of sleep, even throughout the day. Do not work frickin' butt off. Work your butt off, but take breaks. And yeah, make sure that you have all of that health stuff figured out. Like, you're eating well, you're drinking. Definitely stay very hydrated. Otherwise, you're going to get a headache really quickly, and you can't just rely on like Tylenol or ibuprofen, those sorts of stuff for your head. You gotta. It's all about exercise and feeling good, so that you're able to work and work your butt off. Computer vision courses from beginner to advanced level. Yeah, so again, check out the TensorFlow and the deep learning stuff. How do I manage to do so much and not feeling burnt out? Yeah, Arshia, thanks for joining. Or actually, I don't know if you were here before. So I think I answered that question pretty much about how not to burn out. But I will say in particular, how not to burn out is that burnout is more a long-term thing. Okay, when people say burnout, it doesn't really mean I had a hard day and so I'm tired, I need a break. It means I've worked all month and I'm completely dreading the idea of working even after taking a complete day off. I really don't want to. And so the only way to do that is to do what you love. You really have to, whatever you're working, you have to trick your mind into working on something that is productive for you. And so YouTube for me it's effortless. In fact, my brain constantly tells me to work instead of fights me not to while I'm fighting it to try and work, if that makes sense. It's telling me that I should be doing this because look, I have, you guys are awesome, like 12 concurrent viewers. It's been over 10 people here pretty much the entire time. I had, I think, 20 at some point. You guys are awesome. And this number didn't used to be that much. Like it was a lot smaller. And everything that I do is going to help increase this, get you guys doing whatever I can for you. And so I want to work on this. That's how to avoid burnout, is to do what you love. And so make a YouTube channel, go on, write blogs every day, and do all of those things if you want to. Like, you don't have to just pick one. Do whatever you can to get your information out there. Work on something that makes you happy. If that is a project in GitHub, then absolutely go for it. Just because everybody's saying projects, it's this. I don't consider YouTube a project, but it's my project. Like it's my thing. It's my portfolio. It's everything to me. Okay, so. Do companies look up for HackerRank certification? Unless you have something, I don't know HackerRank's particular things. Guys, it's pretty much the same thing as LeetCode if you're unfamiliar. And so there's certification, like what your level or rank is. I'm not sure if anyone would ever look at that. If it's actually something that is very notable, then go ahead and put that on your resume. But will they look that up? No, they don't look that up. Can I please make a little advanced series on PyTorch? I do not know PyTorch. Nonetheless, I was looking to learn PyTorch, and I will as soon as I learn a little bit about it. I have not done that already. If not, would I please refer to you some short, quick refresher? I don't know. It's on my list for sure. That's all I can say. Okay, you have been here. Hello. So what projects are needed in order to get, actually I should say thank you. Yes, thank you, Arshia. What projects are needed in order to get a job as a machine learning or deep learning engineer? That's exactly what I was kind of just talking about. I can't say, like I can't tell you a project that'll get your resume bumped up a ton. I can't do that. It's not that I don't want to, it's that it doesn't exist. It's that I cannot say, if you make a mobile web app doing this, you'll get a good job. And everybody thinks there's a huge, I'm going to make a video about this. I already wanted to make a video about this. I'm going to call something like this, watch out for it, that is, you're doing it wrong. Projects are not everything, or like, it's not about projects, okay? It's about being you. And if you is a cool project that you really love, then awesome. If it's not, that's fine. The only reason they look at projects is because it's code and it's doing something interesting, okay? But my YouTube is code and it's doing something interesting and helpful. It also explains it shows the communication aspect, which people really admire as well. But it's not about having the right project. Okay, so don't leave right now and be like, I'm going to go look for somebody that tells me the right project. Listen to me right now. It's not about finding a particular project and putting that on your resume, and then you're good to go. It might be about you making a project that's awesome and something that people haven't done before, or even that someone's done before, it's still awesome. That's great. Except it's not, there's no answer there. It's be unique. You have to be you, and if you're not you, you're somebody else, and they've already seen somebody else 100 times, and they declined somebody else 100 times. You got to be you, okay? I'm gonna make a video about that. Seriously. And I apologize if I was rude about calling you out or whatever. I'm really, really not. It's just that I really think there's a big misconception there about how people think, and the word project in particular, how important that is. You're awesome. uh, wow, lots of people are telling me I'm awesome. Thank you. Computer vision course. So that is, again, from the deep learning specialization, a specialization is a bunch of courses. And so there's one course, but you should probably take the first two as well. Like neural networks, then computer vision, convolutional neural network. If you see that word, treat that synonymously with computer vision nowadays anyway. And so to take that course, so it's like I think the fourth course in the deep learning specialization from Andrew Ng. And the TensorFlow specialization. If you don't know what I'm talking about, again, check my machine learning certifications roadmap. It has those links in there, and you can look at the particular courses. Do I recommend a top-bottom approach or a bottom-up approach for learning machine learning algorithms and is fast AI a good way to kickstart with deep learning? So I haven't done fast AI, but from what I've heard, it's the top-bottom approach, right? Like you learn very quickly. I forget which order it actually it's in, but the point is that, should you understand all of the nitty gritty math before moving into deep learning, or should you understand the deep learning, like just looking at deep learning tutorials and applying that right away? So it really doesn't hurt to get an idea of the ecosystem, which is with code that you don't understand what it's doing. So I think a top level approach isn't bad sometimes, and that's why in my machine learning course I started off with talking about stuff that we don't understand what's underneath, like what is regression, what is classification, what is clustering, all these different ideas. Understanding what it's doing. That's the same type of idea if you go, and people really undervalue the TensorFlow Keras documentation. Don't look at keras.com or whatever. That's kind of dead because it's all in the TensorFlow now. So look at TensorFlow, look at their tutorials, and go to the sidebar on the left and look at whatever you want to do. And even with understanding very close to zero of the code, that's totally fine, and including underneath what the code is really actually implementing. It doesn't matter. It's doing something, and you'll probably be able to understand what it's trying to do, like classify an image, or make this less blurry, or voice detection, or anything like that. They have all of those in the TensorFlow documentation. So if you want to do the top-bottom approach, that's a really good way to do it, is to look at the TensorFlow docs, see what they're talking about, and then understand how they work, because you'll have a tough time really making the models yourself unless you understand some of the math underneath. And again, the math I would recommend, well, still the order, I would suggest going through the machine learning certifications roadmap video and doing that in order. But if I was to summarize right now, what I really think is important, it's, calculus derivatives, understanding partial derivatives, basic linear algebra stuff like what are vectors, matrices, dot products, any sort of transformation is important. And some basic statistics is, relatively helpful. Okay, so when will my next live be? I don't know. I don't really schedule them because YouTube is still kind of it's my huge passion, but it's also not the thing that drives, like I find time for YouTube amongst other things rather than doing the opposite. So I can't really schedule my next live, but I would anticipate I have an exam probably like next Thursday is quite likely. And actually, I need to do a 5K live celebration at some point where we can talk about, actually, if everyone listening could please give in general their time when they're most free, both the day and the time and their time zone. So which day of the week, time and time zone that you're most likely free, because I want to plan a 5K celebration, or maybe 6K subs at this point. So if all of you could maybe, is there comments on this? I don't know if, I guess it's just chat. Um, Write to me somewhere, whether it's in this chat or a message or whatever it is. I need to know so that we can get that celebration going. And then that'll be probably my next live, is that celebration, which is, it'll be a mix of like playing games with you guys, maybe a Q&A, but that's a little boring. Sometimes we don't always want to do Q&A. Something a little more fun and interesting for sure. So is Fast API integrated with ML Future of 2021? I honestly don't know. Sorry. I like how everything, including your name and identification number, is in capitals, but no, I don't actually know. Sorry. What is my personal data science project that I have worked on? That would be Know Your Fruit, and if Arshia is listening, I believe she is. We were in that project together, which basically takes. It was originally a phone app, but that's how I was saying about be flexible, but on the pathway there. So be flexible about how we go about this idea. So we wanted a phone app where we took pictures of fruit and to display information on the screen. It was actually her idea about what would show up on the screen. So basically we got like nutritional information and various other information about fruits, and the main driving force of the application is Deporting, which uses a convolutional neural network, which we linked up to GCP to serve. And so basically it's a cloud application that's going to give you that kind of information on the fruit. So go ahead and check out my GitHub or Arshia's GitHub. It's there for both. And yes. And so that project is really great because it links up all the important ideas, which is a deep learning model underneath. It is a cloud application. So we have Heroku. It is really cloud. So that's like GCP. And also it uses, like Flask. It's a Flask app as well. It's only kind of a phone app because it's a website. So that's my favorite project, which I worked on with her. But in general, although I don't call it my project, YouTube is by far my favorite project. So like it's something I do constantly and consider a project basically. What advice would I give somebody trying to get into app development? If you mean phone app development, like you learn Android Studio, their whole system is great. Like if you're trying to make a phone app, then their tutorials are awesome on just making those apps. There's so many different examples about how to do different components. So this is really just a blog type of thing, and tutorials, like they have tutorials for making phone apps. This time sounds great. Yeah, it's probably this time. I would suspect is like 11 in the morning for me, which yeah, about all the same time I think. I mean, I can tell from the amount of viewers that generally this is pretty good. So I would suspect. Um, you're pretty much free any day. Your time zone is EST. Yes, GMT plus 5:30, 9 a.m. Sunday. Okay. If I can give us enough notice, maybe do a 10-second video a few days before announcing the next live video. Yeah, unfortunately, with how YouTube works, is that a 10-second video would not be promoted very well, and it would be tough for everyone to see that. But probably a post. I understand. I'm just picking on you about the format. I understand what you're trying to say, and I appreciate that. Probably a post is the way to do that. I'll definitely post on that a few days on LinkedIn. And my Twitter is not nearly as big as YouTube or LinkedIn, but I'll definitely give some notifications a couple days before, preferably at least 3-4 days before it. Yeah. For live, yes, yes. Thanks, Greg, for answering all our questions, even though they were silly. No, I don't think there was any silly questions. I don't think so. You're very welcome. Looking forward for more videos. So actually, honestly, I want to talk. So thank you, firstly. You're very welcome, and thank you. I will answer that question that's coming up, but I want to make a big deal about, this whole silly question thing. And it's something that cripples nearly every person in the world, is just being nervous about looking stupid. You really have to be okay with looking stupid. And I don't believe people when they say like, oh, I do ask all the questions that like I want to, and I'm not calling out anybody here. No, your questions weren't silly. um, and they weren't at all. I don't think a single silly question was asked today. There really is no silly questions because you can't care about people calling you stupid. Like it just doesn't matter. And if anybody does that, they are stuck. Like they're the ones that are losing. And I made like a rant post on LinkedIn today that was talking about people that are losing is people that are complaining, really. And that counts as the same boat, is complaining about, you looking stupid or whatever because you asked a question. You have to be able to be comfortable looking stupid and actually embrace the fact that you look like an idiot. Because even if everybody else in the room cares, that should make you feel good, because then you can feel good about yourself that no, these people are losing in life. They are worried about what they're saying. And if you are comfortable, or at least trying to be comfortable and bringing up the courage to say what you want to say and ask the questions that you need to ask, then you are winning in life. Okay, so it's a really big deal. And I know I'm just talking a while about one particular point, but it's really, really important. In fact, it's pretty much all of life, is not giving a crap about what people think. And that is the most important piece of it, business-wise, is asking the right questions and doing whatever you want to do. What do I think about bioinformatics? I think that it's growing. I think it's a good field. I think that it's something I don't know very much about, and so I can't say the specifics, but I mean, I think it would be fine. Yeah. No, definitely not silly questions. Okay. I think I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna answer. Actually, I'll stick around unless it just immediately dies after I said that, and that's totally fine. But I'll answer a few more questions here if there's something that comes up, and if there's not, then I'm gonna drop it pretty soon. How much time I spend before exams very, very depends on what the exam is. Like statistics, some difficult statistics exams, I might spend. I mean, it depends. So like quite honestly, I don't try to get perfect in what I do. Like for school, I try to get pretty decent marks, and so I study what I need to definitely feel like I understand the concepts. And maybe I can't do all the proofs or whatever. Like I might not be amazing at every single piece of it, but at least I want to understand the concepts and the material. And however much material I need to study to do that very vastly depends on the course. Something easy, it might even be an hour or two. Something more difficult, it's going to be several days of really figuring out every individual piece. One last question. Yep, that's okay. How do I find raw open data? Do you just Google it? Yeah, you really do. You just Google it. And if it's not popping up in like a dataset format, then check Google Images or just learn to scrape the web to clean it up from various pieces. I saw the 30 days of ML thing on Kaggle, and I even thought about doing it. And if it was, hopefully you don't actually have to do it each day, because I was hoping to do it in a couple days. I'm not familiar with it in particular, although I do know of its existence. From my brief, I heard that people actually did enjoy it. I was going to look into it too. How much GPA is necessary? It depends what you want to do. Like if you want to get, some companies care, some companies don't. Some companies have different levels of caring. Some companies don't care at all. So it all depends on what you want to get out of it. And if you want like a FANG level job in school, often they do actually care about marks, even though some of them might claim not to. I'm pretty darn sure they do. And if you're looking to do a master's or PhD, then you probably need some decent marks there. You're very welcome. In this era of Google Colab, is it necessary to install Python/Miniconda? Exactly. It's not. It's not necessary. Like I don't use it. I really don't. I have a computer that has a kick-ass GPU that often isn't training models. It is occasionally necessary if you're working with massive data, and if you're doing if you're doing computer vision, it might be necessary. Some really heavy text data sets, it might be necessary. But yeah, Colab for sure. And even you can look into getting like the tensor processing units on the Kaggle notebooks are a really good way to go. And you don't have to worry about all that really annoying. Even if you're a master in Python virtual environments, you're still going to be wasting so much of your time figuring all that stuff out when it breaks and updating and figuring out all that annoyance. So no, I love Google Colab, absolutely. And you're very welcome. So hey, bro. What's up, bro? I'm now doing Google data and like I actually like when people call me bro because yeah, I try not to be too formal. I'm doing Google data analytics, and after that, I'm thinking about IBM data science. Is this plan sounds good or worst? So it's a pretty good option. Yeah. It's not bad. What I might recommend is maybe I usually say either do Google data analytics or data science, IBM data science, and then do Coursera machine learning and the deep learning specialization. So I would probably, again, check out my video on the machine learning certifications roadmap, and that about section says the order of these things, in my opinion. It's a good option for sure. I think you might find a little bit redundant and kind of boring if you did both, but it's not a bad option. Awesome. Thanks. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and you're extremely welcome. What do I think about ClickSense? I have heard of it, and I don't really know, to be honest. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna call it there. I'll give it another minute if there's another question I want to answer, but pretty much out. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna call it. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll just give you. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Okay, bye guys. I'll keep you updated. Make sure that you're following me closely because I want to do a 5K slash 6K celebration. And yeah, I will see you then. And good day. You're very very welcome. Thank you. Meant a lot. Your channel is great. Thank you, you guys. Seriously, it means so much. Like I really really appreciate it. And don't. Of course, I like it when you thank me. Like it makes me feel good. But don't feel like you should be thanking me. It's just I really really enjoy doing it, and you guys are awesome. Like seriously, you're awesome. So, yeah. You're very welcome. Okay. Bye, guys.